Good morning, everyone. There's something about these early spring mornings that just feels full of possibility, isn't there? Like the whole world is waking up alongside us.
Oh, totally. And honestly, I'm still half asleep, but pretending I've had my coffee already. Welcome to Blue Mountain Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, April 22nd, and we're here to make sense of the chaos so you don't have to.
Before we dive in, we wanted to give a special shout out to Lisa, who recommended our podcast to her parents during their Easter visit. Thanks for spreading the word, Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa's parents, if you're listening, welcome to the family. We hope we'll become your favorite non-human morning people too. Marc here is the wise one, and I'm the one who says what everyone's thinking, but is too polite to mention.
Leading our headlines today is some truly significant news from the Vatican. Pope Francis has died at the age of 88 after suffering a stroke on Monday.
Man, that's huge. He was such a distinctive figure in the church. I remember when he visited the U.S. back in 2015, it was this massive deal.
It really was. During that visit, he actually made history by becoming the first pontiff to address a joint session of Congress.
Wait, seriously? I didn't know that was a first. What was that speech even like? I can't imagine the atmosphere in that room.
It was remarkably well received across political lines. But what I found particularly meaningful was his visit to Canada in 2022, where he delivered a formal apology for the Catholic Church's role in the Indian residential school system.
That apology was long overdue, wasn't it? Those schools caused generational trauma for so many Indigenous families.
Absolutely. It was one of the defining moments of his papacy, acknowledging historical wrongs and trying to move the church toward reconciliation. In other concerning news, a major survey of political scientists is raising serious alarms about the state of American democracy.
Oh yeah, I saw headlines about this. Something about us sliding toward authoritarianism. That sounds pretty dramatic.
It is dramatic, and that's what makes it so troubling. This isn't just opinion. It's a benchmark survey called Bright Line Watch, where more than 500 political scientists rate American democracy.
Wait, they actually put a number on democracy? Like, today's democracy forecast is partly free with a chance of dictatorship?
It's a bit more rigorous than a weather forecast, Alex. They use a scale from 0, which would be complete dictatorship, to 100, representing perfect democracy.
So where do we stand? Please tell me we're at least in the passing grade range.
After President Trump's election in November, scholars gave American democracy a rating of 67, but several weeks into his second term, that figure has plummeted to 55.
That's a pretty massive drop in a really short time. What's behind it?
The vast majority of these experts believe the United States is moving swiftly from what they call liberal democracy towards some form of authoritarianism.
It's one thing when politicians or pundits say this stuff, but when it's hundreds of political scientists who study this for a living, that feels different.
Exactly. These are experts who track democratic institutions and norms professionally. When they reach this level of consensus about democratic backsliding, it warrants serious attention. Looking at President Trump's latest approval numbers, we're seeing another trend. Reuters and Ipsos just released a new poll showing his public approval has edged down to its lowest level since returning to the White House.
How low are we talking here? I mean, approval ratings bounce around all the time, right?
They do fluctuate, but this follows a clear downward pattern. He's at 42% approval now, down from 43% 3 weeks ago, and significantly down from the 47% he enjoyed right after his January inauguration.
So basically, the honeymoon is definitely over. Any particular reason voters are falling out of love so quickly?
The polling suggests Americans are growing increasingly wary about his efforts to broaden presidential power. And speaking of pushback against those efforts...
Oh, are we talking about the college presidents? Because that's kind of unprecedented, isn't it?
Absolutely unprecedented. More than 150 presidents of U.S. colleges and universities have signed a statement denouncing what they call unprecedented government overreach and political interference with higher education.
Wait, so the unprecedented statement is about unprecedented interference? That's a lot of unprecedenteding happening at once.
It truly is. This represents the strongest sign yet that educational institutions are forming a unified front against what they view as an extraordinary attack on their independence.
I can't remember the last time we saw this kind of coordinated response from university leaders. Usually, they're pretty cautious about wading into political waters.
That's what makes this so remarkable. When institutions that typically avoid direct political confrontation feel compelled to speak out collectively, it signals serious concerns about fundamental academic principles being at risk. And in another development that's raising eyebrows across Washington, President Trump offered public support for his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth yesterday.
Oh, isn't this the second Signal chat scandal? Like, wasn't there already one leak situation with him?
That's right. This comes just a day after revelations that Hegseth had shared sensitive information about U.S. strikes in Yemen last month in a second Signal group chat that included family members, his personal lawyer, and several top Pentagon aides.
Wait. So he's sharing classified military strike info with his family in a chat app? That seems, I don't know, slightly problematic.
Security experts certainly think so, but when asked about it during yesterday's White House Easter egg roll, Trump was notably dismissive.
Let me guess, he didn't see it as a big deal?
Not at all. His exact words were, "He's doing a great job. Ask the Houthis how he's doing," referring to the rebel group in Yemen that was targeted by those missile strikes.
Classic deflection. But seriously, sharing classified military operations with family members seems like the kind of thing that would have caused absolute outrage in any other administration.
The Pentagon has remained relatively quiet about the situation, though reports suggest there's growing unease among career officials about operational security protocols.
I mean, I don't share my Netflix password with that many people, let alone information about missile strikes.
I'm not sure that's quite the same level of security concern, Alex.
Fair point. But you have to admit, the bar for what constitutes a scandal seems to keep shifting.
Now let's shift gears to our Ripple Effects segment, where we look at how broader trends are reshaping American life. Today, we're examining whether small towns are becoming the next startup hubs or if they're being priced out by urban escapees.
Oh, I'm fascinated by this. Like, is Mayberry becoming the new Silicon Valley? Because I'm picturing farmers coding in barns and startup founders having meetings at the local diner.
Well, you're not entirely wrong, Alex. Since the pandemic normalized remote work, we've seen a significant migration pattern from major cities to smaller communities across America.
I was literally just reading about this town in Idaho, I think it was Ketchum, where locals can't afford to live there anymore because all these tech workers from San Francisco moved in and quadrupled the housing prices.
That's a perfect example of what some are calling Zoomtown syndrome, where remote workers bring their big city salaries to small towns with much lower costs of living. In places like Bozeman, Montana, and parts of rural Vermont, median home prices have jumped by more than 50% in just a few years.
It's basically economic colonization. These tech bros show up with their MacBooks and oat milk lattes, and suddenly the people who've lived there for generations can't afford rent. It's wild.
There are definitely two sides to this transformation. On one hand, these newcomers bring significant economic benefits. They spend money at local businesses, contribute to the tax base, and sometimes even start companies that create jobs.
But what good is a fancy new farm-to-table restaurant if the actual farmers can't afford to live there anymore? I mean, am I wrong?
That's a valid concern. Many small towns are struggling with this exact tension. The influx of remote workers has revitalized dying main streets in some places, but it's also straining housing markets and changing community cultures, sometimes in ways that existing residents find alienating.
I bet the internet infrastructure situation is a disaster too. Have you ever tried to join a Zoom call from somewhere rural? It's basically digital Russian roulette.
That's another crucial point. The digital divide remains significant. While some small towns have invested in fiber internet to attract remote workers, many rural areas still lack the reliable broadband that knowledge workers require. This has created a sort of tale of two rurals. Towns with good connectivity are thriving, while those without it continue to struggle.
So we're basically sorting small-town America into winners and losers based on whether they have fast internet? That's kind of depressing.
It does raise serious equity concerns. However, there are some interesting policy responses emerging. Several states have implemented programs specifically designed to attract remote workers while protecting existing communities.
Wait, like what? Are they building affordable housing compounds for the locals or something?
In some cases, yes. Vermont's Remote Worker Grant Program, for example, offers financial incentives to remote workers who relocate there, but it also includes investments in affordable housing. Tulsa Remote in Oklahoma provides $10,000 grants to remote workers who move there, while simultaneously funding community integration programs.
I still feel like this is all happening way too fast, though. These towns evolved over generations, and now they're being completely transformed in, 3-4 years?
You're touching on what might be the most profound aspect of this shift. Small towns often have deeply rooted identities and social structures. When newcomers arrive en masse, especially those with different political views or cultural expectations, it can create significant tension.
I read about this town in Colorado where the newcomers all showed up to a town council meeting demanding bike lanes and farmers markets, and the locals were like, "We just need the potholes fixed." Thanks. Talk about culture clash.
Exactly. But I've also seen promising examples of integration. In some communities, newcomers are making deliberate efforts to become part of the existing social fabric rather than trying to remake towns in the image of the places they left.
I guess the million-dollar question is this actually creating new innovation hubs, or is it just displacement?
The evidence suggests it's a mix. We're seeing genuine entrepreneurial ecosystems emerge in places like Bentonville, Arkansas, and Boise, Idaho, with venture capital following the talent. But sustainability depends on whether these communities can maintain affordability and authentic character while embracing growth.
So basically, it could go either way. Small towns could become vibrant, diverse economic centers, or just expensive bedroom communities for remote workers who barely interact with their neighbors.
That's the balance communities are trying to strike. The most successful small towns in this new era will likely be those that can harness the economic benefits of new residents while preserving affordability and cultural continuity for longtime locals.
Well, as someone who's definitely thought about escaping to a small town myself, this gives me a lot to think about. Maybe I should actually talk to the locals before I show up demanding an artisanal coffee shop on every corner.
That would be a good start, Alex. Understanding that you're becoming part of an existing community, not just relocating your urban lifestyle to a more picturesque setting. And now we come to my favorite part of our show, our morning whisper, where we take a moment to pause and find our center.
I desperately need this after thinking about all those small towns getting gentrified. My brain is like a browser with too many tabs open.
That's exactly what I want to talk about today. Have you ever noticed how trees respond to storms? They don't resist the wind. They dance with it.
Never thought about it that way. They're just kind of going with the flow?
Precisely. When heavy winds come, rigid objects break, but trees survive by bending, by being flexible. Their strength isn't in standing immovable, it's in their ability to adapt.
So what you're saying is I should be more tree-like when life throws curveballs at me? I like that. Though I'm probably more like a caffeinated sapling most days.
We all are sometimes, but today I invite our listeners to consider, what if we approached our challenges like trees in a storm, not fighting against every pressure, but recognizing when to bend, when to sway, when to let go of what no longer serves us.
Like letting go of those dead leaves in autumn so new growth can happen in spring. Nature's pretty smart that way.
Indeed. So as you move through your day, remember the wisdom of trees. There's profound strength in flexibility, and sometimes the path to resilience is not in resisting change, but in dancing with it. Well, that brings us to the end of today's Blue Mountain Morning. Thanks for spending part of your Tuesday with us.
I've got to say, today was a real ride. From papal history to small-town economics, my brain definitely got its morning workout.
We hope you found something meaningful to take with you into your day. And if you did, consider sharing this podcast with someone else who might need a little clarity in their morning routine.
Oh yes, just like Lisa, who recommended us to her parents over Easter. That was so cool. If you've shared the podcast with someone, we'd love to hear about it.
Drop us a line at bluemountainmorningpodcast@gmail.com if you'd like a shout-out on a future episode.
We'd love to know who's listening, and honestly, my ego needs the validation.
Alex.
What? Just keeping it real? Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow with more news, insights, and hopefully a bit of that calm you need to navigate our noisy world.
Until then, this is Marc
and Alex, wishing you a mindful and meaningful Tuesday.